see me, you see my inmost parts. Your eyes are open, your eyes are open. You hear me, you hear my inward thoughts. Your ears are open, your ears are open. So here I am, waiting on you. My heart is open. Here I am, worshiping you. With arms wide open, I am open. I am open. You're speaking. You speak to my spirit. Your mouth is open. Your mouth is open. And you give me only good gifts. Your hands are open. Your hands are open. So here I am, waiting on you. My heart
never find choice fruit hanging on a bad, unhealthy tree, and rotten fruit doesn't hang on a good, healthy tree. Every tree will be revealed by the quality of fruit that it produces. You will never pick figs or grapes from trees. People are known in the same way, out of the virtue stored in their hearts. Good and upright people will produce good fruit. Likewise, out of the evil hidden in their hearts, evil ones will produce what is evil. For the overflow of what has been stored in your heart will be seen by your fruit and will be heard in your words. What good does it do for you to say, I am your Lord and Master, if you don't put into practice what I teach you? Let me describe the one who truly follows me and does what I say. He is like a man who chooses the right place to build a house and then lays a deep and secure foundation. When the storms and floods rage against that house, it continues to stand strong and unshaken through the tempest, for he built it wisely on the right foundation. But the one who has heard my teaching and does not obey it is like a man who builds a house without laying any foundation at all. When the storms and floods rage against that house, it will immediately collapse and become a total loss. Which of these two builders will you be? Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath
all face storms. We all have things that will try to shake us. My prayer is that you will set your life on Christ, knowing that when those storms come, you're not alone. know you are God.
So I'm Celine, and with Octavia, we are going to read today Matthew chapter 6. Be careful not to practice your rightfulness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So, when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. This, then, is how you should pray.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you.
We're still going through sermons about Jesus' sermons on the kingdom of God. And I admit, I don't know if you all ever think this, it seems strange to me sometimes, like, oh wow, Jesus gives this like long sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, and then we make like 10 sermons, even longer, out of it. But there's just a lot that's in there. But I think it's valuable for us to get that it did all come together. Jesus, he seemed to preach these similar sorts of topics in slightly different ways as he went around preaching, and that's why Luke's example is a little different than Matthew's. But it's good for us to kind of read it all together. So if you've never read through the whole of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew's chapter 5, 6, and 7 together, I challenge you, do that sometime. Read through the whole thing in one sitting and see how these pieces do come together. Be careful of trying to force it into being some kind of formula, because I don't think that's the right way of it, but it is cohesive. And so as we read all of it together, it helps us to avoid the confusion of misunderstanding just one sentence by having the context around it, right? Like if you only take one sentence without context, that's where we often have the times we get off of what it meant. But if you see the whole context, it helps us get it. And that's part of what today is about, is flipping through some of the things that might seem to not make sense together unless you see them all together. So, we've talked about not having to put up appearances. And that's what we're looking at today is Jesus talked about blessedness, he's talked about the law, he's talked about persecution and how we're supposed to love our enemies, and all of those actually come back to a bit of this, of Jesus talking about appearances and not putting up appearances as it goes. So, not trying to appear blessed can help us to actually just allow ourselves to be blessed and accept it, that it's given instead of something that we earn. And then since we are blessed, we don't have to hide our broken inside between some sort of fake morality on the outside of following this law of, well, at least I don't kill people, but inside having this anger and brokenness in us. And as we do that, we can let God's love work in us so that the inside and the outside match each other in this lived out love. And then as we accept that blessing and that grace, we're able to pass that along to others, even our enemies. As Jesus says, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, bless those. So all of that is sort of the summation to get us to what we're looking at today. And it all fits with what God had said, even in the Old Testament. Sometimes people think there's the Old Testament, God's different than he is in the New Testament. And realistically, I've at least tried to put in pieces of how God's heart of us not having to put up appearances, but being honest in the law and in all these things shows through the Old Testament into the New Testament. And Jesus is trying to teach us that. He's trying to show us that this is the right way to live. So, a first thing that's good for us to get is that God wants us to be seen. He wants us to be visible for his glory. So, after Jesus has gone through this list of people, blessed are those who are poor, those who are mourning, the persecuted, the peacemakers, and he says, you're like the salt of the earth. You bring flavor and you also help preserve it. And you're like a city on a hill that can't be hidden. You're the light of the world. And people, it's not like they light a lamp and then put it underneath a bowl. No, they put it on its stand so it can give light to the whole house, right? And in the same way, let your light shine so that others will see the good things that you're doing and praise your Father in heaven. Now, at their time, they don't have electricity in their houses, so they're not thinking light bulbs and light switches. They're thinking you have a lamp, right? It gets dark at night. If you want to see something, the way you have to do that is put out a lamp. For us today, I don't know, think of your light bulb, right? If you think of most of the rooms in your house, where is the light situated? In the ceiling, right? Often in the middle of the room. So that it can be in a place where it gives light to all these parts of the room. It's not like you put a light down at the floor level and then throw a blanket over it. That would be silly. Which is what Jesus is saying. Right? You don't light a fire and then cover it. No, the idea is it's supposed to be in a visible place, not so that you're staring at it all the time. In some ways, I would say God didn't call us to be chandeliers. Ooh, that's the pretty thing that we look at the whole time. And yet we are supposed to be a nice light fixture. The idea is not that everyone just stares at the light the whole time, but that the light allows us to see what God has done with the rest of it. Let your light shine in that kind of a way so others can see the good thing that God has made. And that can be valuable for us to realize, God's not trying to hide us in some corner. Maybe you have been pushed to the sidelines by people in your life. Oh, you're too young to be quiet. Or, oh, you're too this. Or, no, you're just a woman. Or, no, you're just uneducated. Or, no, you're just this. And Jesus didn't pick his lights based upon if they were only the ones that the world would think would be blessed. He said, blessed are these people that have been pushed to the sidelines but you're like a light, showing God's goodness of what he's doing in your life right now. So Jesus, like he was healing people, like, go show that light. He was teaching truth to people, go show that light. And so there are really good songs, like Christian songs, worship songs that say sort of the whole like, don't look at me, look at Jesus. One of them says, I don't want to leave a legacy. I don't care if people remember me, like only Jesus. And I get that. But know that we are supposed to be seen. We're not supposed to be eminently forgettable in our lives. As in some way where like we're just bland and no one realizes that we existed. We're supposed to be light that gets seen for God's glory, not our own. Which is then where it starts to switch to this different side. We're supposed to be seen, and yet we're not supposed to put on a show. And that comes from like our Bible reading in Matthew 6, slightly later. Jesus has gone through some of the don'ts of good morality, like don't kill people, don't commit adultery, don't lie, and how he treated those as you know the things you're not supposed to do, but it needs to be on the inside, not just the outside. And then now he goes through the do things, like, oh, well, you should pray, you should fast, you should give to the poor and needy, that'd be good. And Jesus, again, sort of has this, I'm not saying don't do it, but if all it is an outward thing, there's no more reward than you'll get than just that. If all you do is put on a show for the world to see, oh, look at how religious I am. And Jesus, that's not going anywhere with God. And so much of Jesus' interactions with some of these religious leaders of the day is all about whose praise are you seeking? God's praise or people's praise? If it's just for people's praise, don't waste my time. So that's a bit of what he's saying. Like, don't do these things just so that you can get people looking at you. But again, we have to figure out how does that work with the let your light so shine, or don't do it to be seen. So when I was in university, we had this area on our school campus that had these 6 old big columns that were from an old building that had burned down, and it was just the columns left, and I guess it was a symbol of survival or something that left them there. So in the middle of this grassy area, there are the columns, and everyone knew of the columns. And a group of friends and I decided, we're going to meet there 3 o'clock, 3:15 every day of the week of school, and we'll pray together for a little while. And it was a very noticeable place, but it wasn't like we were shouting out to everybody our prayers. It was just, oh, this is a place where we can come together and pray. But one of my friends, as we were thinking about doing this, read these passages and had wait, is that the wrong thing to do? When Jesus says, when you pray, go and pray in your closet. Don't pray out so that other people can see you. Don't be standing on the street corners. Oh God, look at how great I am. Which, Jesus uses that example in one of his parables. And so I think sometimes people have this concern, wait, what if someone sees, or what if someone knows? I've seen that happen with fasting as well, where someone is fasting, but you have that awkward moment of they don't want to tell you that they're fasting, but they're at your house and you're offering them food, and they're like, oh, no, I'm not hungry, and it's oh, at least something to drink, and they're like, no, and it's it sometimes becomes more awkward in certain ways when we try to hide, oh, no, I'm not doing that, or in giving those moments. And I think some of that is just a misunderstanding of what Jesus is saying. It's not honestly that no one can know that you pray. People should know that you pray. Or that no one can know that you fast or that you give money, right? When Jesus goes through the Lord's Prayer and teaches that to his disciples, which we read in Matthew 6, Jesus is praying and he's not in a closet. Oh. right? Like, Jesus prays out in public places sometimes. Jesus, our example of like, don't pray just to be seen by men, is sometimes seen. When he fasted for 40 days, he went away from everybody, yes. But somebody had to eventually know he did it, right? Like Matthew or Luke or Mark, when they add Jesus fasted, like somehow people knew. And so there are those moments where, like for practicality's sake, you can tell people, okay, I'm fasting today or whatever. But it's not so that you can be seen and praised by other people. So Jesus, he gives a bit of like the hyperbole side of it when he's like, man, there are some people when they're giving, they bring out the trumpets. It's like you've just landed on a Ryanair flight and they just, look at me, I'm giving. It's just, don't do this for fanfare. When you pray, don't be like standing on the street corner yelling at everyone. And when you fast, don't go around disfiguring your face. So you're like, oh, I'm fasting today. I have no energy. Oh. So the people who do that, they get the reward from the people who, oh, wow. So there's a difference between doing something for a show, right? And just, it's not the whole like, oh, someone found out I'm fasting today. Now God won't give me anything. I shouldn't even fast anymore. I'm having a Snickers. Like, we don't need to take it to those sorts of extremes. The idea is that you're not doing it for a show. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't still do it. And I think that sometimes becomes the problem, is that people are like, oh, well, don't want to tell anybody I will do it, and then we just don't. There are things about good accountability of praying with other people. Jesus actually talks about, like, oh, there's power in praying with other people. So it can be good to have that accountability. But that's not earning God's love, and that's not trying to get praise from people either. It's doing it out of this understanding that God is blessing and is changing our hearts on the inside so that we can live the way He's called us to. And he uses that term, the God who sees what is hidden. And it's the same word as when he said, a light doesn't get hidden. So Jesus uses these, like, there's the hidden part of our lives and the not hidden. And sort of what do we do with that? So at the end of his sermon, he gives us two pictures, the fruit and the foundation. And I think these are then helpful for us to kind of get, like, fruit is something that's visible and the foundation is something that's not. So he said, by fruit, you're going to know what kind of tree you're dealing with. And the same with a human being. By the way that they're living, by the way that they're acting, you're going to understand what kind of person they are. That's going to be something, like, it should be visible. I don't know how many of you ever had, like, fruit trees growing up, or like you've seen a fruit tree at some point in your life. I expect you have. Like, fruit is not something that gets camouflaged, really. Like, you can have big leaves in front of it, but like, fruit's really bad at camo. If you were gonna like be playing paintball with something, don't choose a fruit. It's like bright orange or like mango, and it just like gets this color that's really noticeable. By the time it gets ripe, it becomes really noticeable. Why? Well, because God made fruit to be eaten. And the bugs that camouflage themselves is because they don't want to be eaten. The fruit, totally open to it. By the time it's getting ripe. And sometimes there is that like moments of unseen until it gets to a point where it is seen. When I lived in the Caribbean, I had what they called fig banana tree. Like fig bananas, like these little sweet bananas. They were great. And those were so fun to watch. Because like as they would grow, like they're getting a little bigger, but they're like really, really green, matching the green of the tree. But then it'd be like overnight sometimes. Like I wake up and it's like, whoa, now they're bright yellow. Like half of them in the cluster. It would be like the top half is all yellow and the bottom half is still green. It's like, okay, I know which ones are ready because they're visible, because they're easy to be seen. And so the same with us, like there will be times where we're hidden as we're in our growing stage. so that we can come to a maturity that God can use it, and then he wants to make that visible like a city on a hill. I brought with some fruit today. I think it's still in my bag. Slightly. Let's see if I get it. Because bananas, this is not a fig banana, this is a bigger one. But an important thing to know about trees is that, like, the kind of tree it is the kind of fruit that you get off of this tree. Fig trees bear figs. Thorn bushes have thorns. Banana trees have bananas. Apples don't make oranges. I heard a memorable visual once about, like, what's inside is what comes out. And someone was asking, like, okay, you had hot coffee in a cup and, like, whatever it was, you got jostled, something else happened, and the coffee spilled out. Why did coffee spill out of your cup? And the initial answer is, everyone was like, oh, because, like, someone, like, I don't know, hit them or elbowed them or because they tripped or something. That's why something came out of the cup, yes. Why did coffee come out of the cup? Because coffee is what you had in the cup. If you didn't have coffee in there, it wouldn't have spilled out. And kind of the same with, like, fruit or what comes off of the tree. But there are times where I think there are people who would have the whole, like, yeah, I make thorns and thistles because of all these other things around me. And if I didn't have those things, I'd be making oranges instead. The answer is no, you wouldn't. You want to make bananas? You got to be a banana tree. And what will come out is not solely based upon your externals, but what you are. And you got to think to yourself, if you've been a banana tree for a couple of years and you don't have any bananas, it's worthwhile to ask yourself, am I a banana tree? It makes sense for other people to ask that too. And so part of this, like, hiddenness of Christianity wouldn't make any sense fruit-wise. Because they're like, I've been following Jesus, and I've been putting his words into practice. But, like, if there's none of the fruit of that, if it's not visible in any way, you got to ask yourself, are you a banana tree? Like, there's things that will be visible. But there are things that aren't. That's a foundation. So one of my favorite parts of Jesus' teaching, I think one of the most important parables he gives is of these two builders. I think we often get the idea wrong of, like, the visual of what this looks like, of building your house on the sand or house on the rock. So I've tried to show you this to make it a little more clear. Like, when I was a kid in like children's church and all these things, they would normally show me more of this side. There's a person who builds his house upon the sand, like the beachy area, and then someone who builds their house on a rock that's, like, up on a mountain. Because apparently Jesus would rather spend time with, like, mountain hermits and cave hermits than hermit crabs, right? Like, there's just this whole, like, Jesus apparently doesn't like beach bungalows. They're bad. Jesus would rather have a, like, wood cottage up in the mountains. And that's sort of the way it was put forward. That's just not the way people built houses in Jesus' area in Israel. A more realistic image is this one. In that part of Israel, there's rock under everything. And there's sort of this sandy, clayey soil that's just about over everything. So you have two people that could be building their house directly next to each other. And one of them takes the effort and time to dig down till they get to rock and make sure that they have a foundation on the rock, even though the rest of the house shows above the sandy, clayey soil. And another's like, ain't nobody got time for that. And builds their house just right on top of this clayey, sandy soil. When people are building in Israel, in Jesus' time, and that still often happens today, you build during the summer because it's warmer. But then it's like firm, the like clay soil is now more set, which makes it harder to dig through. But during the winter, when there's the rains, it makes the like clay, sandy soil, it just becomes like muddy mush kind of thing. So you can understand why it's like, feels all nice and firm now, I'll just build on it now. But in a few months, it's like, my house is sliding away in a mudslide. Even as recent as, there's in 1991, a newspaper article about this house that was built, or an apartment building that was built in Jerusalem, that like a third of it caved in, and they say almost, it sounds almost exactly like this. Like, the person built it upon this like clay soil instead of the accepted standard to build it on the rock by getting the foundation low enough. Kenneth Bailey was a researcher who lived most of his life in the Middle East. And he said, as he wrote about these, he said, I went around and I asked a lot of different builders, how deep do you have to go to make a good foundation? He said their answer was always the same, until you hit rock. So how much is that? Is that like 1 meter? Is that 5 meters? Doesn't matter until you hit rock. You keep going. I haven't always been a pastor. One of my jobs before this was I poured concrete. Some of it had to do with like making foundations. And there was one time that I remember specifically, like, Missouri, where I grew up, had this very clayey soil, which was not fun to have to like shovel through, especially by hand, right? If I think of Jesus' time, they didn't have backhoes to come in and like dig everything out. They didn't have these huge excavators that my sons love. It was a shovel. And so like we had to just dig down. It was probably supposed to be about that much so that we could have a level thing to put like the first footing. And I got about halfway, and I was just so tired. It was like, I'm hitting this thing. I feel like I have a pickaxe, and like I hit it and nothing moves. Boss, can we call this good? No, absolutely not. And I'm grateful that he was totally against that idea. At the moment, I wanted to be lazy and tired, and I hated it. But he's right that being like, I'm too tired, I'm not going to make a good foundation, leads to major problems in the future. And you can spend hundreds of thousands building your dream home. If you have a bad foundation, that was a lot of waste of money. But here's the thing about a foundation. You want to know how many of your friends care about the foundation of the house you're living in? How many of them think about it, ever? None. You probably don't either. Because it's hidden. When people come to a house, they're like, oh, I love your house. They don't say, great foundations. Right? It's like, oh, nice windows, those are big. That way people can walk by your house and see you watching TV at night, like every other Dutch person. This would be great. Or, oh, that's a nice door. Or, oh, you decided to do the mail slot this way or that way. Or, the flooring, I like the colors of it. Or, here's all the things you put inside. Like, that's what people see. That's what people care about. And honestly, the same is true in our lives a lot. Most people don't pay any attention to the foundation you have built into your life. They only care about the things that are easy to see. Oh, well, that looks nice. Oh, you're wearing a nice shirt today. Oh, this is a nice dress on you. Oh, that's a great job you have. That's interesting. Oh, your kids seem to be nice behaved. But most people aren't going to care about your foundation until something bad happens. And then they'll be like, should have solved that problem before. Here's the question. Do you care enough about your foundation? Because no one else is going to do it for you. And spiritually, that's the same. No one else is going to build that foundation really for you to make sure it holds. Yes, parents and pastors and teachers, we have a role in trying to help people build a good foundation, but in the end, if you don't do it, you can have the house that gets taken away in a mudslide. That's why Jesus spends this time saying, it's not just about like appearances. Hey, I don't kill people, I just hate them. Hey, I don't commit adultery, every time I'm having lustful thoughts about everyone around me. Hey, I pray. I don't really talk to God, but I learned a good monologue to say. Oh, I give away all this money. I still have so much other money. Jesus is saying, I'm not so concerned about the outside, I'm concerned about the inside. Do you have a generous heart in you? Do you have a heart that longs for relationship with God and so prays because that's communication, that's relationship? That fasts because you realize that you need God more than you need food. That doesn't hate people because you realize they're made in God's image and you're called to love them. That doesn't treat women or men just as though they're objects for your own enjoyment, but as though they're the people that are cared for by God. All of that. That has to do with, do we listen to Jesus' words and put them into practice? And do that work that becomes invisible, and no one will look back later and be like, hey, can we just take off the house so we can look at the foundation now? But you have to put in that effort at the beginning and say, I'm going to build a good foundation on Jesus' word. And Jesus, in that parable, does two very Jesus-like things. One, he pretty much says, I'm the example of what's good to do. And two, he says, so follow my example and do it. He makes it about himself. And then he calls us to obey him. So how far does it take you to get to bedrock? I don't know. Some people might have to dig down further than others just to get to bedrock. I'll be honest. Maybe there's a lot of stuff, of baggage in your life that you got to get through. But it's worth the time of doing it. And at the end, I feel like God's not gonna ask people, how high did your house get built? But more, how deep did you actually go? Because he values that. I've heard people who, when they approach the Bible, they think of this idea of deep, and they're like, yeah, these mysterious prophecies, learning those is really deep. And it's good for us to search out the answers to prophecies, yeah. But you want to know what deep is? What Jesus says deep is? Obeying his words. Love your enemies. And that's people oh yeah, I know that. I don't care if you know that. If you don't do it, you're not deep. But if you do it, there's a depth to that you might not understand tons of other things or ever learn the Greek or Hebrew language. But you've got depth because you put into practice what he says. So, it's up to you to care not so much about what is seen, but what is unseen. Don't just throw makeup on your problems or a new coat of paint to try to distract people, but give God the time to really work on your heart. So your Jesus lifestyle. I don't know exactly what it is for you that you need to do, but add to, build on, or invest in some way in something that's unseen in your life. Those foundation things that other people won't look at, but would be valuable. Maybe that's prayer time. Being you know what, I'm going to invest in time with God, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna even find a closet to be inside this closet just so I can pray. I mean, you can. Or maybe that does have to do with giving, and giving to someone that you know has need. There's plenty of that around the world going on right now. Or maybe that is working on getting things out of your life, right? Like some of those things where Jesus, man, anger, lust, pride, hate, bitterness, deceiving people, manipulating. Work on digging that out. People might not see that those roots are gone underneath the surface, but it will help your fruit to grow much better if you've taken out those weeds. Because in the end, Jesus is worth it. He's worth the time. He's worth the effort.
I'll share something real quick. So over the past few weeks/months, I've been really trying to find God in a new area, I guess, so to say. Because I recently graduated in December, and I'm still kind of looking for a job. So I'm in that awkward period where I don't have a job, I'm searching for a job, and I've been really praying about it, trying to find a job, trying to find the job. I don't even know what the job is. Finding something I like. I don't really want to work any kind of job. So I have some requirements. At the same time, I'm praying to God, okay, God, whatever you want, I'll do whatever you want. I don't have to have the perfect job. I just have to have a job or whatever. But I realized that I got angry at one moment with God because I'm okay, I'm praying, I'm doing what I have to do, or at least I thought it was, but I'm not getting anything. And so I was really searching for an answer. And a couple of weeks ago, God has revealed to me that I have been searching externally while He wants to work internally. So it was very interesting how we talked today as well about building foundation and stuff like that. And God has revealed to me that that's what He wants to work in this area of being dependent on Him. Because I've always been in school. I've never been in a period where I wasn't doing something. So this is a new area for me, and God has shown me that, okay, new area, let's learn to trust in this area. So that's been going on, and it's a very interesting area because I'm someone who's always doing stuff, and so now for God to be okay, now sit still and trust me, and I'm okay, I don't know how that's gonna go, but it's a learning process, and that's what I'm kind of going through. So I just want to say as an encouragement, if you feel like God is not there, because I definitely felt like I was not listening. He was there, just I wasn't focusing on the right area. So he's there. He's definitely there. Just gotta find your way back to Him, or see where He is. Maybe it's internally, because we tend to look outside a lot, but a lot of times God wants to work in us, in our hearts first. So yeah, may that be an encouraging to you to not give up at least, and to keep searching for God, because He's always there.
Hello, my name is BG. I would like to share a testimony about my oldest daughter, who is now 4. When she was 3 years old, she got a baby sister, and she was very, very attached to me. And for her, getting a petition for my attention, it was very difficult. She was very emotional. It was really hard, and we really struggled with this one. Sometimes she was aggressive towards her sister. She would hit her or push her or hurting things. So it was really difficult for us that we were scared to leave them alone in one room. And then in September she started school, and at that time it became even worse. That she had a lot of tantrums, meltdowns after school. So when I picked her up after school, and if my husband Peter, if he was not home, I was scared to go home. So I would go for a walk until he comes home or pick us up, because it was really difficult to have them both at home, and we prayed a lot for her, and also our friends asked our friends to pray, and then one day I had this idea. I was talking to her, and then I told Eva, do you know that I love you even when you don't behave, even when you don't listen to me, even when you're angry at me, even when I'm angry at you, I still love you. And I never forget that on her face, that surprise on her face. I think that she thought that when she misbehaved during the year, that we didn't love her. So, and after that, and for me it was a revelation that she really needed to hear that. And from that day on, so almost every day, I kept telling her that, even when you do this, even when you scream, I still love you. I still love you. And then she would also learn all of these things, and she would tell them along with me that even when you do that, when I do that, you love me. And then I saw improvement in her behavior, and that also saying a lot of good things about her sister. When you're at school, your sister misses you. And then gradually she changed. Now she changed so much that she loves her sister, and when she comes out from school, then she hugs her sister. She's so proud of her, and she tries to play with her, tries to protect her. And there's such a radical change, and I'm so thankful for that she even said that sometimes she misses her sister more than me when she's at school. So we will praise God for that.